Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Graft Concept podcast. I'm here today with James Ratcliffe from JPR Sports Therapy in Rochdale. James is a sports therapist and owns a business here in Rochdale, and today we're going to be talking about fitness, preparing your body for longevity, running long distances to raise money for charity, and much, much more. So James, we'll get straight into it. Sports therapy.
Sports therapy.
What is it?
Sports therapy, what is it? So obviously there's a difference between sports therapy and physiotherapy, but it's not really a big difference, I would say. The biggest sort of differences, I would say, is sports therapy is obviously you can still do a weekend course and class that as be a sports therapist after you've completed it, or you can go to university and obviously complete a university course as a sports therapist and be a graduate sports therapist. So obviously I'm under the umbrella term the graduate sports therapist, but the only differences between a graduate sports therapist and a physio is a physio would go to university for 4 years, and they would study the musculoskeletal side of things, cardiopulmonary, obviously sort of like stroke, rehabilitation, things like that. Whereas as a sports therapist, we just do the musculoskeletal side of things in a little bit more detail in 3 whole years. So that is the only difference, really, I would say. So a sports therapist is almost like an MSK physio, but not without the same wording and the same governing body.
Right, okay. And I know, like, through our conversations, like, you've been involved with, like, professional sports teams and things, haven't you? Like,
Yeah.
How's that come about?
Through opportunities, I suppose, again. So there was a time when we were in... so I went to Rochdale University, great university, by the way. If anyone wants to do sports therapy, I would say recommend going and having a taster day there because it's fantastic. But... so we sort of had different placement opportunities in our time in university. So in our sort of in our first and second years, we're sort of like local sort of teams, semi-professional sort of amateur teams, touching on sort of rugby league teams as well. So we could go in there one day a week and obviously do some sort of a massaging of the players pre and post training. And then the third year, we actually had to undertake I think it was a 4-month placement. I ended up doing 6. And we had to actually be interviewed for our placement role, were the people who were going to send us for our placement, which was fantastic. So similar to as we are today, it was fantastic because obviously they got to understand what kind of where they saw our sports therapy journey go into. So whether it be more clinical side, whether it be more sort of sports-based side, and obviously my interview was a bit more sports-based side. And received an email for 5 days later or so saying I was to be taking up the placement at Liverpool Football Club Academy. So hence where obviously the sporty sort of nature of my job has come from, having the opportunity to work at Kirby with obviously many sort of different players, obviously names that unfortunately I'm not really allowed to mention for obvious different reasons. But that's kind of where the journey started within sports, because having that window open for me when I left university, having that experience led me to obviously working with other different sports teams, Barnsley Football Club, Rochdale Football Club, Wakefield Trinity Rugby League Club, many different teams in different conducts of sport. So yes, so
Nice. And I know, like, through, like, our relationship has been through, like, me initially sort of coming to you as a client. You do a lot of, like, individuals. So, like, who is your ideal client now?
Very good question, Chris. Someone like yourself would be like the ideal kind of client, if you would. Very active, spends a lot of time with his mobility, spends a lot of time on the recovery aspect of things. When they come in and see me, it's like almost like a fine-tuning kind of session. So in terms of almost keeping you going, maintenance almost, keeping you where you're at, so that's a kind of perfect client because you know that they're in good health. But also a good client in terms of sort of like a nice case study to work through is someone from the very start of a sort of a long-term injury and progressing them all the way through to seeing them play sports again. That's always a nice injury to have in as well.
Yeah, nice. So, touch wood. I haven't had to come to you for, like, a specific injury yet.
No, you haven't. Touch wood
like
as well.
my main reason for coming, and I think probably a lot of people that are listening to this will be like having one eye on, like, longevity.
Massive.
How can people sort of getting sort of into the mid 30s to like approaching 40 or even beyond that, what do they need to be thinking about to make sure they can either sort of train or keep mobility as they get a bit older?
Absolutely. Quite a lot of things, as I said there. So recovery aspects of everything is massive, because that's where everything starts from, or where all the problems could start from as well, with the lack of recovery. So recovery is massive. And we can obviously look into different avenues of recovery. So nutrition, that'd be one massive part of it all. So obviously making sure that you're getting the right sort of nutrients in your body that are going to help you recover, making sure that you're ready for the next session that you're partaking in. So that's a big one straight away. And then touching on sort of mobility, so mobility/stretching. So as you know yourself, obviously a very active individual, obviously likes to go to the gym. If we went to the gym and trained chest 3 times a week for, 4 or 5 weeks, whatever, without any sort of mobility or stretching, what we'd imagine is obviously the muscles becoming a lot shorter, obviously feeling a lot more restricted, feeling a little bit more rounded in our postural type. So hence why obviously stretching and mobility is massively important as well, so then it doesn't obviously cause all these other issues, what we know as muscle imbalances. So obviously that tends to be a lot of people's problems, imbalances of different muscles, and muscles then overcompensating for other ones. So if we can sort of create that balance, so a lack of imbalance, create a nice balance between, then obviously you've got a nice sort of a platform, I'd say, to work from there then, to obviously for your longevity, so you can keep progressing in whatever exercise sport that you want to do in a safe, correct manner.
Yeah. So in terms of a range, so somebody who doesn't really do much in terms of activity to someone who trains, say, 6 times a week,
Yeah.
what is the range of sort of time they should be focusing on mobility, or what's the bare minimum and what's sort of the upper end of that?
Absolutely. So the person who isn't partaking in much exercise, shall we say, their first kind of principles in terms of longevity and obviously exercise and things like that, their first sort of steps would be, as we know, would be to start moving.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, to be able to start moving, we need to have a level of mobility,
Yeah.
so to be able to perform the movement. So the people who aren't exercising much, it's a case of getting that mobility right, getting the muscles sort of at a nice starting point to then allow you to go and do your exercise. And obviously what we know is, in terms of these kind of people, shall we say, is I like to sort of go on, have you ever heard of Couch to 5K?
Yeah.
It's a great starting point for a lot of people, and it gets a lot of people up and moving, but more importantly, it makes a lot of people understand the sort of what their body's going through and obviously what they need to be able to obviously run the 5K. Because when they first start the Couch to 5K, you know, they're not in a position where they can run the 5K. Obviously, hence why it's a starting point, the Couch to 5K. So I would always sort of say for these people, start moving. And when you start moving, you'll start to see, obviously, the restrictions and the imbalances, and then you can start to really focus on your stretching and mobility around the areas of concern. Obviously, compared to someone who's exercising 6 times a week, obviously on the opposite end of the spectrum, they need to be doing a lot more mobility. But these guys should be aware of that already, obviously with the journey that I've just explained, from novice to almost sort of like challenger, sort of competitor sort of thing. And the mobility should always be a part of their journey and part of their programs anyway. So if I was to say to you, obviously someone who exercises quite a lot, do you do sort of stretching and sort of some mobility stuff either post-session if you get the chance, or as and when you can during the week? And the answer will be yes, it will be, because obviously you'll know that's important for you to allow you to keep up with that 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Now, if you didn't focus on the mobility aspect of that and your muscles started to get a lot tighter, you won't be training 6 days a week, because you do have levels of pain, creating levels of muscle imbalances down the line, and that would stop and affect your training.
Yeah. That, like, you mentioned like pain there, so that like led me on to another question I had, was like, how do people differentiate between soreness from maybe just training or training a different set of muscles that they haven't for a while, and so that soreness or like pain that's potentially an injury? How do they like work out whether they're doing something wrong that might hurt them more further down the line?
Absolutely. So especially in clinic, we like to use a couple of different terminologies, and I've done this in all sort of different academies and sort of different clubs that I've worked at. And there's two words that we like to use, and it's discomfort and pain. Now, the biggest difference between the two, I'd say, there is a discomfort is something that you can work within, if that makes sense. So, for example, we're at the gym, we're training, and we feel a slight little niggle, but it's not warranting enough to stop us from doing that exercise. That's your discomfort level. Now, obviously, therefore, that we can work through a discomfort level. When we're sort of doing an exercise, for example, if we might be running like a long distance run or something, and we simply cannot put any weight down on that left foot anymore due to pain, that's pain. So I would always say pain is something that stops you from completing that exercise that you're partaking in.
Yeah.
Now, the soreness, obviously, in terms of that. Obviously delayed onset of muscle soreness, obviously DOMS as we know it as. Now obviously that, again, that's a resultant of. So that's going to be more similar to the pain, but it's a pain that's come as a result of an exercise, not a pain that's happening during the exercise, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's where my differences lie between the two the two areas that you've just discussed there, Chris, yeah.
Right, okay. So like coming back to clinic and the people that you're seeing, what are the most common injuries that people are coming to you with?
Yeah, good question. Very good question. Now, obviously, it mixes around the board, and this could be quite seasonal as well. A lot that we see are obviously postural kind of issues. People sort of sat at a computer desk for quite a while, and obviously, what we said before about sort of like your novice to your competitor, they're at work. And they might be obviously typing at a desk, moving the mouse, obviously doing whatever they need to do. And what that happened to them over the course of the day, without them realising, is we'd create this arching posture, this sort of like this tucked chin posture, kind of like this. Now, at the end of the day, that's going to create loads and loads of problems: pain, discomforts, muscle imbalances, trigger points. It's going to create all sorts of things. So that's a big one that we see, because obviously one thing that we can do is we can sort of release the traps. And obviously then just to calm the area around the shoulder blade around. So that's one thing that we commonly see, and obviously due to a lot of people working as in a computer / desk-based job. That's one.
Just on that, like, do they tend to be people that come to you because it's something they notice themselves, or are they getting like referrals, or?
Probably about 50-50, I'd say, yeah. So they're noticing obviously the pain themselves, whilst obviously people are walking past them in the offices, and they're sort of commenting on their posture. Oh, you're very sort of like tucked in there, sort of thing. And obviously then when they've tried to release in work, they've then realised that obviously it's due to sort of very tight traps and obviously tight musculature around the area. Yeah. Therefore, knowing that they need to go and get that sorted before it becomes almost stuck into place.
I guess that's got worse like through COVID, hasn't it, with like the trend of people working from home and probably not having as good a setup in terms of display, desk, chair, like properly.
Well, that should actually be a legal thing now. So obviously most companies in office, ergonomic law, so they should have sort of like the right lumbar support. They should obviously have the computer set up at the right height for the individual, so not just across the board for that individual. So actually in offices now, what people should have is someone coming around and making sure that everything's set up to the correct way that individual needs it. When you've just said there, then when we're at home, we might get up out of our bed at 10 to 9, starting at 9 o'clock, and it's a case of we just jump straight on. We just jump straight on the computer, and we just log on and we get to work. Now, the problem with that is, with a home-based setup, is what height is the table? There's not many people who work from home will actually go and measure that table height.
Yeah, or it's just like a kitchen
table. Or
it's
table. Just a kitchen table or a bar stool for like a bar or anything like that. And obviously then some people work from a laptop and not from a monitor. Yeah. So obviously again that changes the height of which obviously someone's looking into the computer screen. Again, distance to the screen. Another thing, obviously if it's this close, whereas if it's further away, obviously it might be leaning into it. So obviously that can affect things. So yeah, the setup of someone's at home sort of workspace is something that is now affecting the population a lot more, which is obviously why we're seeing a lot more postural issues within clinic, Chris. Yes, that's a very good point that you raised there. Very good point.
Yeah, I guess it's just it's not going to get any sort of
Any
disappear or get any easier, that is it? As
No.
people, the trend seems to be that people are working from home more and more.
Unless they're employing someone to go around and obviously go around the home and make sure everything's set up. But the problem with that is, as I've just said, when you're in a rush with 5 minutes to go to work, the person's not thinking about obviously their ergonomics, their posture. They're just thinking about getting ready for work for the day.
Yeah.
So that comes down to a level of the individual as well, I kind of guess.
Yeah. So moving away from sort of more general life, I know you had a lot of guys that you were sort of seeing on the run up to like Manchester Marathon. Had a really good set of results, I think, from the clients that you were working with.
Fantastic.
Were there any common injuries that you saw with people that you saw, or people that are running that sort of distance?
Yeah. So obviously, with it being more road running in its sort of the terrain, we get a lot of sort of ITB. So obviously, you might have heard this as runner's knee syndrome. So obviously, ITB, iliotibial band running down the outside of the upper thigh, if you would. And obviously, again, coming down to the level of impact, hitting the floor. So the more people doing more running, more distances, more impacts with that foot hitting the floor. And obviously then a lot of sort of ITB, runner's knee, so obviously in its insertion going into the knee. You can also have ITB a little bit higher up, obviously where it starts just near the sort of the outside of the glute. The greater trochanter bone, if obviously we want the anatomy behind it. So that was one. Obviously, patella tendon just underneath there. That was another common injury that we saw, or common area that we worked on. And again, similar, just due to the amount of impact and loading, obviously placed by the individual in relation to the floor. Now, the difference between road running and sort of off-track running, I'd say, is there's a lot more load going through when our feet are striking that floor on the pavement than it is anywhere else. So obviously, if you think then we're training for higher distances, and obviously as we sort of we usually have a plan in place as well when we're preparing for a marathon. So obviously the distances will increase each week. Or there's I know there's a couple of people who obviously you know as well, Chris, so Neil and Marcus and Connor. Now, when they were doing their marathon running for the Manchester Marathon, they were actually doing 3 different kinds of sessions. They were doing a long run a week, a short run a week, and a track run a week. So obviously they were mixing it up. And I'll be honest, I saw less impact injuries in those 3 than I did in the other people who were just sort of just doing distance and distance and distance. So I think obviously for anyone out there who's interested in preparing to run for a marathon, already runs long distance races or ultra marathons and wants a little bit of some little tips and things like that, that would be me one tip, is to try and sort of chop and change your training a little bit so it's not the same always, just so it helps your body basically and your joints. Different surfaces, different speeds, different times, all that kind, different heart rate zones. Just keep changing things up to reduce the impact of what it has on your body.
Different shoes as well, I found.
1,000,000%.
Because so many of the different trainers that are out there now are designed for quite specific purposes.
Yeah.
So you've got your speed trainers with your carbon plate that really push you onto the front of your foot.
Yep.
And the times that I've worn those, I've felt pain in sort of areas that I wouldn't with my everyday trainers. So I guess like you say, just being aware of the different circumstances and mixing it up.
1,000,000%, because it's always good to have a bit of variety. It's always good to have variety within your training, within your life. So yeah, different shoes, different surfaces, different times. Try and chop and change and try different things, I would say. But in terms of first-hand experience, what I've seen, that variety of training has helped those individuals that have obviously mixed up their training to obviously have less injuries. Yeah.
So, talking about long distance running, we both recently ran together a charity running in aid of your late partner Emily.
Yeah.
So we did 52 miles, 84 kilometres across the space of a day, about 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
What gave you the idea to do that in sort of Emily's memory?
What gave me the idea to run 52 miles? I'm not sure, Chris. No, what gave me the idea was, unfortunately, Emily was 27 when she passed away. So I wanted to sort of, and Emily was, she had her own fundraising legacy, and I wanted to obviously continue that for her. So I thought, what ways can I do that? And I thought, well, she was 27 when she passed away, so we can obviously do a bit of a longer distance sort of event. I can sort of invite a couple of people to come in and help out if they want to do, obviously, which you did, and obviously Leroy and Matt, amongst many other people. Obviously, probably too many to mention the amount of people that came in and walked a lap or ended up running 10, like Joanna did. But give me the idea. So I wanted to sort of, and obviously the reason why it was 54 miles is because we wanted to run 27 laps, one for each year that Emily was alive. So hence why obviously it came to that. So I chose Watergrove Res because of the, I thought first of all it'd be the easiest and flattest route, and the second of all I thought it'd be the shortest in distance, and obviously third of all I thought it'd be a lovely spot. If we had a lovely day, it'd be a lovely spot, and obviously more people would come up and support and share the day with us.
Yeah.
So that's what gave me the idea to continue Emily's fundraising legacy, to raise money for the Anthony Nolan Foundation.
Yeah, and that reservoir was like a spot you went to together a bit, was it?
Yeah, so we used to live over a sort of Bradley Fold way. And when we used to obviously come and visit my parents, we'd always sort of go for a walk around the res. Sometimes Emily would bring her dog Lola, and it was just a lovely spot, and she liked it. But we used to love going for walks around reservoirs, so I thought might as well make it a meaningful reservoir to run round.
Yeah, good. So, obviously there was a massive amount going on that day, sort of not just running 54 miles, but everything that's sort of going through your mind with what's happened with Emily, all those people that you know and care about sort of being there.
Yeah.
How did you find the day?
Massively overwhelming, somewhat emotional, but proud, very proud of what we managed to achieve on that day, not in terms of the distance ran, well, in terms of everything. So the distance ran, the money raised, the amount of people that came up, and just sort of like bringing showing what a good community can do when it comes together. Yeah. And that's what we achieved that day. That's what we all achieved that day.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I think as someone who I didn't know many people that were there, but the sort of the spirit of everyone getting together and helping each other out, particularly at like some of the challenging points with the distance, it was really impressive to see and nice to be a part of.
It was great to have you there, mate. It was great to have you there.
What you mentioned, like fundraising and the legacy, like where are things up to with the fundraising at the minute?
Yeah, so this is obviously all on the top of my head. I think we're about £9,400 all in all, which obviously I'll break down. So we raised, including gift aid, of course, we raised £1,022, myself and my friend Will, who did the Manchester 10K, which obviously was all towards the Anthony Nolan Foundation, so we kept that as part of this total amount.
Yeah.
Total amount raised on the current Just Giving page is I think it's about 5,700 and something, so we'll call it 5,750, plus the gift aid, which was, I think it's about £1,300 as well, so obviously that brings us up to 7. So then 8, and then there's £1,000 that I've got in cash that we took from selling cakes and coffees and donations on the day. I've just been very, very busy with work, getting back to work to pay that in. So when that's paid in, plus the gift that it'll have on top of it, we're probably looking at about... and then obviously we have Leroy's sponsorship form that he got. Yeah. And as well, the most important part of this accumulation is the fundraising that Emily raised, which is obviously where all this started from, which was £220 in May 2020. So that brings us up to about £9,400, £9,500, something like that.
Amazing.
Mad, crazy.
Yeah.
But all for Emily's legacy, and the amount of potential lives that she could have changed it's phenomenal, and it's all down to her and obviously us guys for helping her continue her legacy. Yeah,
I mean, I never met her. Like our relationship and got to the point where
it is now.
I'd met her, but like, what do you think she would have thought of that day?
She'd have been very similar to me. She'd have been, well, obviously I said I was very overwhelmed. She'd have been 10 times more overwhelmed by it all. But again, she'd have been proud. She'd been proud of what we can do when everyone sort of mucks in for a good cause, because Emily was always about sort of getting stuck in and helping everyone out that she could help out. So yeah, she'd have been over the moon, and she will be, and she still will be, because obviously this isn't the end of the legacy. It continues, but we need to rest and plan for the next challenge, Chris. We can't be doing double marathons every 2 weeks or so.
No. So I know you've not run anything like sort of like that distance before, and you've not really been a big like endurance athlete or interested in that. No. Do you think you'd do anything like that again?
I think I would. As I think I said to you maybe at the end of the run, I think it'd have to be probably with the same people or a similar group of people. It's not something that I'd ever consider maybe doing on my own. Just because obviously, as we know, when the going got tough, the four of us helped spur each other on, and I think we were a really good support network for each other on the day. So it's something that I would do again. I might sort of entail maybe slightly different kinds of means of transport, shall we say. So it might be sort of like some cycling involved or something along that. But it's something that I think I will do again, and I think there's challenges for us to go out there and complete down the line that I think we will probably all consider doing together. But in what you said before about was I a long distance runner, no, I wasn't really. I've always been able to run, I've always been very sporty, but it's not something that I've been training towards, I would say, until obviously we come up with the idea. And then I did about 3 half marathons and just under, I think it was about a 40k run, which was my levels of preparation for it. So I did quite, obviously to me that was some distance, but in relation to the actual running that we did on the day, it wasn't really anything. It was half. It was half.
Never say never.
Never say never.
Cool. So like, it was really interesting being out. Like we started at 4 a.m, didn't we? Like out, a small group of us to get started, and at times it was like quite intimate. Like nothing else going on apart from just running around there.
Literally.
And we had some like interesting conversations. So I think like one thing we touched on when we were running around, I think I asked you whether you're a spiritual person.
Yeah. I remember you asking this. Yeah, I remember you asking this actually. I think it might have been like I think it was almost like lap 11, lap 12, just as we were approaching our marathon, and I felt more spiritual then as well. It's something that I've always been in touch with my spiritual side, yes. However, maybe a lot more so after obviously losing Emily. I probably say I was a lot more sort of in tune with my spiritual side. I was always aware of, shall we say, signs and things like that were being sent down, but then, which was originally when my granddad first passed away, and then since Emily went, I think that sort of like almost fine-tuned it, I would say. So, and it brought me a lot of comfort and inner peace, and that's probably as a reason as to sort of why I would say I am more spiritual now. But I think it helps. It helps sort of like just if you maybe having a moment. I wouldn't really say I have many days anymore, but if I'm having a moment, you know, being in touch with that spiritual side just helps you bring you sort of back round again, I would say, Chris. So it helps me on a personal level in terms of my peace and my happiness, yeah. Yeah.
I think like just before, had you been to like a Reiki session?
Yeah, 2 days before the run, I went to Reiki, yeah.
What, the first one or?
First ever one, and I'd happily go again. Happily go again. I walked in there not knowing what to expect, in all honesty. I had no idea.
What was it like?
Crazy. In a good way, very, very peaceful. So again, going on the spiritual side, very peaceful. This lady, obviously, she put this headphone on, obviously nice sort of like very calming bliss music. And obviously in this dark room, I'm just trying to obviously go through the steps in my head now. In this dark room, with the music on, I think I had a blindfold on as well, and just obviously just calming down. And it was in my head, I was thinking loads and loads of things. And then for me, obviously, it felt like halfway through, it obviously just felt like everything just dropped off in my head, and I was just sort of like almost there in like I wouldn't say an empty shell, but I wasn't overthinking anything. I was at peace in my mind as well as peace in my soul, if you would. And I walked, and obviously then the light turned on, and she obviously I came around from sort of, she went, yeah, you've been gone for about 10, 15 minutes. You just dropped off, fell asleep. But before that, you were thinking about all these things in your head, and then you just let everything go and you calmed.
Yeah.
And I walked out of that as calm as I've been in a long, long, long time. And I won't lie to you, absolutely knackered as well. I was absolutely drained. So I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh no, I need to keep this energy as much as I can for Sunday, for the run. But I was so calm. And I think that did help me on the preparation, so the Saturday night before our run on the Sunday, because I was all calm. I wasn't overthinking about anything. I wasn't thinking about what if this happens, I was just calm. I was ready to go, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, we just went, and we just did it. So anyone who wants to go for Reiki, or anyone who wants to go and explore what Reiki could do for them, I'd say go and try it. It worked for me, it might work for you.
Are you going to do it again then?
I'd happily go again, go again.
Nice.
And I'd say, obviously, if anyone's even considering, well, what is it? If you've got any sort of, if you're sceptic about it whatsoever, go and try it. Go and try it. What's the worst that can happen?
So off that one session then, it seemed like it helped a lot sort of immediately afterwards, but has it like continued? So I guess it's 2 weeks since we did the run now. So has there been other instances where you've felt the benefit of that? Or is it something that continues, or something that's quite an immediate impact?
I'd say for me, in terms of what my sort of reaction to it, it was definitely helped me a lot more immediately than it is doing now.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that I've still got this peace of mind that I'm in.
Yeah.
I've always been a massive overthinker. I've always had things going on in my head. Like if I'm not thinking about one thing, I'm thinking about something else. There's always something to do. So I'd say that less of that is going on. So it has had a sort of a more longer lasting effect, but the effects were definitely felt a lot more significantly more in the immediate aftermath of it, yes.
Yeah. Cool. And have you ever been like, there's a lot of things said about like the benefits of meditation and stuff, haven't they, which I guess is linked. Have you ever been someone that's done that? I mean, I've tried it, but I don't feel like I know how to do it.
Meditation, no, but I think there's a fine line for meditation in terms of, well, for example, we've all come across the guy Wim Hof. We all know, well, if you haven't, go and check him out, he's fantastic. Wim Hof, I read his book when I was on holiday with Emily a couple of years ago, when we first went on to Tenerife on our first ever trip, actually. And I was reading the book that some person had given me. And she said, you don't read books. I said, I'll read this one. I mean, I had the intention of reading this book, but at the same time I thought, it's probably going to be 3 pages a day sort of thing. You know, I'm sort of like in the pool sort of thing. First 3 days into the holiday, book was read.
Yeah.
It gripped me that much, to the point where obviously, now the swimming pool that I was going in on holiday was not obviously an ice plunge, obviously it wasn't, but it was still quite cold. I didn't take a temperature, so I'm not even going to hazard a guess as to what it was. And when you first jumped in it was one of those that it could take your breath away. And obviously first day you jump in it, it's too cold this, and you get out. By the 5th day I could stay in there all day because of the level of breathing control that I had. And the reason why I'm going on to this is because I think breathing control is just as effective as meditation. I really do. If you can calm your breathing down, I think that's just as I think it's, well, it is, meditation is all sorts of breathing and everything like that. So I think breathing control, Reiki and meditation, very, very 3 similar kind of things going on in those things there. Very, very similar in what it's done for me.
Yeah. Interesting. So this is like obviously the Graft Concept podcast. We've had various chats about this system that I've come up with during some of the sessions, and sort of what it's all about and how it might be able to help people. So it's the 5 pillars of graft, obviously growth, relationships, adventure, fitness and teaching. With growth, like what is personal growth to you?
Again, great question, because obviously if you were to ask 10 different people that question, you probably would get 10 different answers, which is obviously really, really good. Personal growth to me, in terms of, again, I'm going to relate this to sort of like scenarios and things that might have happened in my life. So personal growth for me is to find my inner peace, find my happiness and just live every day as if like it's not my last, so I don't agree with that, but live every day to its full potential. And if I can live the rest of my life like that, I would class myself as being, that's my personal growth, I would say. So how I can focus on the things that would improve me and how that's going to improve the people around me, I would say. That is, for me, that's personal growth. So can I find my happiness, my inner peace, and then how does that sort of influence the people around me in terms of my friends and my family and clients as well.
Are you someone who sets lots of goals? Or it sounds like you've got like systems that you want to sort of live on like quite a daily basis, but do you have any sort of like short, medium, long-term goals that you work towards, or is that not really the way you do it?
Yeah, I do. What I do is I make a long-term goal. So obviously, for example, like I don't know. Obviously, long-term goals change. Obviously, because hopefully you always achieve the goal. Then obviously you need to set yourself a new one. So I always set myself a long-term goal, and then what I do from that is I break that long-term goal into how I'm going to achieve that through short-term goals. So that's how I always would do something. So for example, I want a clinic. So obviously my short-term goals would be obviously where you need to be able to advertise. You need to obviously then maintain a smaller client base and expand it and things like that. So, and obviously hence where now obviously we sat in my clinic, and those short-term goals have led me to achieve my long-term goal. So that's how I've always done it. I've always tried to set myself a long-term target or aspiration, but obviously my short-term goals are how I'm going to get there.
Yeah, nice. The first part of your answer that you sort of gave to that question, you sort of came on to like friendships, family, relationships. It's like relationships is the second pillar of graft. Like, how important to you is forming strong relationships with people?
Everything, absolutely. It's for me, it's the essence of life, because if you don't have that support network around you, if you know, we all go through difficult challenges in life, we all do. And if at that time you're going through that difficult scenario or challenge that you're facing, and you don't have those stable, strong relationships, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't know how people would get out of that predicament. Having people to sort of to talk to lean on, to sort of go ask for some support, things like that. Relationship for me is the essence of life, which is why I think it's fundamentally part of obviously the concept that you've created, because I think that intertwines between all the other ones as well. I really, really do. Yeah. But relationships for me, I think it's a crucial part because, well, for example, if you don't have good friends, you know, you're probably not going to get out there and go and get out of your comfort zone, I would say, and you're probably more likely to sort of like just be a little bit more introverted, sort of like happily to stay inside your own house and things like that, and then that would then affect the F part of the Graft Concept, the fitness side of things. Yeah. So for me, relationships, having good people around you, good family, good friends, good support network who push you on to go and achieve that sort of the next things in life that you're aiming to do with you, or they've got you back and they want to see you succeed yourself. So yeah. that I think relationships are a key component to life, Chris. I do, yeah.
Yeah, nice. So adventure, like what, living your life as a bit of an adventure, like how does that play out in your life?
I think life is one just big adventure. You know, when we first arrive on this planet, no one's telling us that you're going to end up here. So life is just one big adventure. So go and make the most of it. You know, as I said before, as you mentioned, we have ups and downs. People come in our lives who you think are going to last forever, and you think you're going to sort of like have, I don't know, a future with, and then obviously these people, unfortunately, for whatever reason, they're taken away from you. So you live your adventure to its fullest potential. If you want to go on a holiday, you go on a holiday. If you want to go for a run, you want to go for a run. Adventure's important because at the end of the day, by having adventure, it gives you happiness, as you can see here, just talk about it. So, and it also gives you memories. Yeah. So if me and Emily would never have made our adventures on obviously all the holidays, then we wouldn't have had all the lovely memories that we've got now. So that's the adventures again. It's get out there and live your life. Yeah. No one's out there to say you can't do something, and if they do, we're the type of people that want to go and do that anyway. If someone says you can't do something, you kind of want to go and do it anyway. So go and live your life and have fun. Live every day and have fun every day.
I think that's a big part of it as well, isn't it? Because like sort of you think of adventure and I don't know, but I'm immediately thought to like travelling or holidays.
Yeah, straight away you do.
But something that I found is that just finding it in like every day.
Yeah.
Whether you can go like somewhere new for a meal or take the kids to a new park and stuff, like just finding it on that very sort of entry level of adventure really brings like variety, which I think a lot of people in the past, I've not found that in my own life. So I think just like variety is a big thing, isn't it?
1,000,000%. Because if you do everything the same all the time, then straight away you're going to lose the happiness behind it because I've got to go and do that again. So it's variety is good, but I like what you've just done there. Then your adventures, it's holidays, but then it's relationships as well that you've discussed there. So obviously with your wife, with your children, you're exploring, you're adventuring with your lovely family.
Yeah.
So and it's strengthening the bonds that you've got there as well. So adventure, this is why the 5 pillars intertwine, and I think it's a fantastic concept, Chris. I really do. I really, really do.
Yeah. Cheers. Fitness is next.
And well, we almost just spoke onto it, haven't we? So
Yeah.
by getting out there, adventuring, you're also obviously that's part of your fitness as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think like there's 2 aspects to like fitness for me. There's the physical side and like the mental side. How do you monitor like your physical and mental fitness?
Good question. So, I mean, there's many different sort of like ways you can monitor fitness in terms of health, isn't there? As we know, obviously, blood pressure, all these kind of stuff. But I sort of just see how I feel with it. So my fitness is a case of my physical fitness. Relates to obviously nutrition. Obviously, that is a big part of it, as we know, because obviously, as we said before, nutrition with the recovery aspect of it all. And if you're not eating the right things, you're not recovering. And then if you're not able to sort of like for your fitness, then you have to train or go for a run or whatever it is that you're into. So, and then I think on that, what I've just said there, then I think mental health comes as a physical. So, for example, Chris, when you're doing, obviously I've never done a high rocks, you have. When you're during the high rocks race, say for example the day before you might have had something might be on your mind or something like that, someone might have upset you at work or something like that. When you're performing in the high rocks event, what are you thinking about? You're not thinking about that negative sort of thing that happened the day before, are you? You're thinking about what the task in hand.
Yeah, I think it's like almost like a form of escapism is what I find in those sort of events where it's difficult to think about or focus on anything other than what you're doing at that very moment.
Yeah.
And I think like living busy or hectic or like demanding life, you definitely need an element of escapism, and there's positive and negative forms of escapism, isn't there? Yeah. Like in the past, I'm somebody who relied on like alcohol to get away from things as a form of escapism.
Yeah.
And finding fitness later in life, I've sort of switched that round, and I feel as though like the fitness is definitely a more positive way of getting away from things.
Yeah, 1,000,000%.
But the other thing that I found with it is resilience is what it's taught me. So doing difficult things and like subjecting yourself to discomfort, whilst I mean, before I started the fitness journey, it just sounded like the worst thing ever, like getting up off the couch, stopping watching TV and going like, working your ass off on like an hour and a half workout. But you learn to sort of dig in, not to give up. And the way that bleeds into every area of your life is amazing, really. I
think, obviously, just to sort of touch on what you've said there, then you were sort of very comfortable living in your comfort zone. And I think as soon as you sort of like start to explore the outside world, if you would, so outside of your comfort zone, obviously, that's when you start to realise more about yourself as well. Yeah. So, for example, it might think, I can't be bothered going for a 5k run. Yeah. You know, you might think that, but as soon as you've done 3k, the 5k run, you sort of think to yourself, why haven't I done this any sooner? I feel brilliant. And it's that escapism. So the biggest thing for me was, obviously, as you can probably imagine, lots of sort of like, should we say, not nice thoughts, obviously after the aftermath of obviously Emily. But I knew that I needed to do something. So obviously I thought, well, what I like to do is I like to go to the gym. So I was off work, so I was going to the gym, but again, the mental aspect side of things there, nothing really was changing because I was at the gym, but I wasn't working towards any significant specific goals or anything like that. So as soon as I started to adopt some goals within my training and add some structure into my training, and then obviously I added in the nutritional element of it all as well. Now then you could see all that there. That was having a massive impact on my mental sort of fitness as well, because I was starting to think less negative thoughts for one, and two, obviously I was starting to see some physical changes. So my fitness health directly had an impact on my mental my mental fitness. My physical fitness had a direct impact on my mental fitness. Similar to what you've just said there, then it sort of made me want to go and do things again. For example, go to the gym, organise double marathon runs, go and play golf, get outside in nature again and start to enjoy life, because it made me realise that living in that comfort zone, nothing was ever gonna change, and something needed to change. So I'd back you up with what you said. I think by doing both focusing on physical fitness and mental fitness, it made a significant change in me, and hopefully a long-lasting one, similar to yourself as well.
Yeah. I think it's not something to rush, is it?
Definitely not. You can't. You've got to try different. We said before, we touched on the word before, variety. You've got to try different things to know what you enjoy. Yeah. So for some people, like for example, if I was to come and do a high rocks session with you, I might not enjoy it. I probably would do. I might not enjoy it, but therefore then instead of going, well, nothing's for me anymore, carry on and go and exploring something else. So, there's always a different variety of something for you to go and explore, and it might not be for you, but at least you can say you've gone and you've tried it and you knew it's not for you.
Yeah. Definitely, I think like trial and error is one of the best ways to progress, isn't it?
Massively.
So the last pillar of graft, then the T, teaching. I think as humans, like there's a little bit of us that wants to teach or sort of pass on knowledge that we have. How do you do that? Either whether it's in your role as like a sports therapist through work, or beyond that with like the relationships you've got with other people.
Yeah, I suppose this one probably started when I was working sort of within the academies as the sports therapist, because you get in sort of children, obviously of adolescent ages, coming in with sort of many different injuries. I mean, most likely at that sort of age is like growth-related pathologies, but I won't go too much into that. And you've got to try and teach these kids at an early age, which obviously goes into what we've seen here perfectly, how important it is to stretch, to recover, to eat the right things from an early age. And that's why I suppose I love working in this industry, because the impact you can have on someone's life is massive. But imagine if you can do that when they're 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, whatever. And then even if they don't become a professional footballer, you've taught them some good staple pillars of life and some good foundations to work on, which then obviously might create obviously being somewhat similar to yourself in terms of a good round-the-board athlete.
Yeah.
Because that's what I would say. So that's in terms of teaching from a younger age. But any sort of like people who I see now, obviously a bit older in age, what you said there before, longevity. You're teaching them why this problem has come about. You're teaching them how the solution is going to obviously get rid of the problem, and then the third most staple part is why the teaching of you, why the things I'm teaching that person, that client, is going to keep them at the gym for a longer period of time, so that longevity behind it. So there's obviously different aspects within the teaching pillar of the concept, but you're teaching people, basically, so they can keep going for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
And also you're teaching them knowledge, which turns out to be power, because then they can help other people as well.
Yeah. Do you notice like a difference in terms of like people who are receptive to like the information you're giving them? So my perception would be that you'll get people that will come in, they'll sit here for an hour, have the treatment, go away, not think about it until the next on the bed. And then you might get people that come and go, why are you doing this? Like, how is that going to impact why I've come? How do like the long-term results differ between those two stereotypes?
I mean, the way that I like, great question again, Chris. The way that I like to work things is I will always provide or tell someone about the problem, and I'll always sort of tell them what the solution is. And obviously, therefore, as humans, we always like a solution because obviously a solution solves the problem. So that's the way I've always sort of gone about my theories and the way that I run in clinic anyway. However, yes, you're right, basically. You get the ones that are, shall we say, egotistical lifters who are always trying to progress to that next weight. And you can see, obviously, there are a lot of people we follow back on our social media, JPR Sports Therapy, and we see a lot of people who have sort of said, oh no, I'm going to deload this week, or not. In terms of deload, I don't mean coming completely off the weights. I mean obviously just dropping them to a comfortable amount. And you're looking at the bar and you're thinking, there's one more blue weight on there than last time I saw this video. So you get the people that are obviously happy to sort of sit in front of you and say, yeah, I'll listen. When they come back in, I've still got this problem in my shoulder, or whatever the problem may be. You don't even need to ask any questions at that point, Chris, because you know, with what the information that they're saying, whether they've listened to your sort of advice or not, i.e., I've not listened to your advice, I've been egotistical lifting again, been upping the weights and I'm still in pain. However, the people that do listen tend to make a full recovery, and obviously they've got the knowledge around what the problem was in the first place because they've actually taken the care and the time to listen to what obviously is being said to them, and the chances are they have a lot more sort of prevention around that problem for future sort of time, if that makes sense. So the chances of them coming back in with the same injury, it's a lot less percentage for the people who listen than, of course, to what I like to call the egotistical lifters, which is probably not really fair for me to say, but at the end of the day, all it takes is for people to listen to simple advice and they don't get injuries or they don't get problems, or not as many anyway.
No. I think everyone's had a little bit of that in the
Everyone's had some point, but for the longevity in terms of, because we keep saying this, what can we do to make sure that we're active and we're training in whatever field that we like for as long as we can? And it's about obviously what we've just said there, listening to that advice and listening to your body as well, because that's the biggest one. Obviously, you've got loads of people that can advise you to do this, but at the end of the day, you listen to your body and what it tells you, because it's telling you that pain or it's telling you that for a reason.
Yeah. So I know, like we spoke about, like some of the football and sport side of things. You've got some like quite close links with like MMA, like gyms or competitors, haven't you?
Yeah.
Do you? And they're like professional, aren't they? So
Yeah.
like operating at a high level.
High level, yeah.
Do you get involved with their programming in terms of like the mobility, or is it more they'll come to you as part of a routine or when they've got an issue?
And again, this is a great question because even though I work with a lot of, as you said, professional and amateur sort of MMA boxers, things like that, what you tend to find is the professionals who are sort of, not going to say higher up the game, but on maybe sort of, should we say, assigned to sort of more elite organisations, their levels of mobility prior to even meeting me are already fantastic. They're already really, really good, and it comes down to what I said before. The nutrition's on point. They get in, the recovery's on point. Obviously, they're doing sort of like sauna work, ice bath work, cold plunge pools, things like that. They're obviously training 5 days a week, 6 days a week. But around that they know that to allow them to train for 6 days a week, they have to take some time and work on their mobility. So they'll do a lot of mobility in their own time. We've also got, obviously, a lot of them know that it's important to come and see someone like myself, not as often as possible, as in every day, but when they're approaching in fight camp, it's usually once a week. So we can obviously sort of iron out any sort of knots and things that become a problem. As we said, prevention's better than cure, as we both know in many a different field. So we can iron out the knots and stuff, which then helps them with their mobility work because they don't feel the imbalances and the restrictions and the tightness. And that then helps them directly in terms of their training because obviously they're quicker, more explosive, more power. And obviously that then helps them on when it approaches fight night.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I think that's good, mate. It's good to get insights of other people and how they sort of see those 5 pillars and how, whether it's directly or indirectly, sort of utilise them in life. Yeah. Yeah, brilliant.
I just to touch on that, I always find concepts and systems that intertwine within each other as just sort of easy flowing sort of concepts to grab or to grasp, if that makes sense. And I think with this one, the fact that each individual one would directly go into the other pillar, I think this is why I think this concept is fantastic, because it's a direct sort of link into each one, and they can all positively affect each other. Yeah. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's like we were speaking about goals. Have you read like Atomic Habits? You ever read that book? James Clear.
James, yes, I've read the sort of the first half. I need to get back in touch with that and read the other half.
He says you don't rise to the levels of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I think I found that really useful. Yeah. I used to be someone that was just like trying to set goals all the time, and it just feels like a bit too much of a moving target. Yeah. So if you can like come back to like a system
that works, that you know works as well. Yeah,
you can find that. I think it helps.
It's a foolproof system, isn't it? Falling back onto what you know works for you. So I like that. It's a good way of looking at things. Yeah,
it always sticks in my mind, that one.
I like that one.
Well, thanks so much for like taking the time out to do this, James. Like, first in-person Graft Concept podcast. I hope everyone's going to find a lot of use in it. I'm sure they will. In terms of like following you and sort of finding out a bit more of what you're doing in like the clinic and like personally, where can people find you online? Obviously, you've got the clinic here in Rochdale.
Yeah. We've got Instagram and Facebook handles, JPR Sports Therapy. We have got a website. We're currently having one rebranded as we speak, so that'll be the next few weeks. But we've got obviously, if you need to contact us, we've got an inquiry system on the current website, which sends an email into our inbox. We've also got obviously a mobile number if anyone wants to reach out and ask any questions or wants to book in for any future appointments. One thing I would say is evening appointments 4 p.m. onwards are ridiculously busy, so just give us some time on that. But no, if you need anything, happy to help. You reach out to us, and we'll hopefully, as we've been saying all day, me and Chris, will provide that solution to your problem. Yeah, and we've touched on like some of the higher end like professional sports, but it is that complete spectrum of people that help here, isn't it? Everyone, we've got sort of 90-year-old people coming in. We've had people who've had strokes coming in. And we've obviously got sort of like, as I said before, like academy football, or not just football academy, sort of athletes coming in, going through various growth pathologies. So you name it, 7 to 90-year-olds and everyone in between is what we see in here. So, and if we can be of service and be of help, then we will be. Good, mate. Right, well, thanks so much again for doing it. Looking forward to seeing what the next endurance challenge is. Yeah, no doubt you'll be a part of it. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, thanks, mate. Top man. Cheers, Chris. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Cheers.